Hello, Second Street families. This video is going to give you an overview of our current draft school-wide discipline policy. We want your input as we finalize this policy over the summer, and so that you are very clear on expectations for your child at Second Street. So the beginning of this policy just kind of gives you a little background. And so an equity audit was done back in 2018 and 2019 that basically the data showed we need to implement a school-wide discipline policy. This has been something that was very much lacking for a long time. And with that process, we teamed up with a group called ABRI, and they helped us kind of kick this off and develop some supports in our building using the PBIS structure, which is Positive Behavior Intervention System. The first thing we did was create common expectations for our building. And we built that through the lens of using the acronym PRIDE. So Panther Pride, we review this every morning. Ask your students about it. I'm hoping they can recite these quite well. But the P in PRIDE stands for purpose. So students understanding their purpose, whether it be in the classroom or in the lunchroom or at an event outside of school, that they understand what that purpose is and they understand how to be successful in that element. Respect, we talk about respecting others, both adults and peers, older and younger. We talk about respecting things, the building, items in the building, your Chromebook, the classroom, your pencils, and respecting yourself. Integrity, we talk about doing the right thing all the time, especially when no one is looking. Discipline, that's the ability to control yourself. We talk about when situations might be rather challenging or even when situations are rather easy and figuring out what does discipline look like in this moment. Effort, that is our E, and that is us discussing with students how to try your best. Even if you're super tired one day, if something is super challenging, that you always try very, very hard. So that acronym and those expectations have been SBDM approved. And through that, we have created some common expectations of what does your purpose look like in different areas of the building? What does respect look like in different areas of the building? And making this visible to students. So as we continue on with those expectations, we get into the structure of student response team. Well, student response team was implemented by previous administration and has taken a lot of shifts. And it is to a place where we're going to create an overhaul going into next year. It's not meeting the needs of our students. And so we are looking at what this looks like. And right now we have a full-time certified staff member for this position, and we got a full-time classified staff member for this position. So we'll be very much overhauling this student response team. So this part of the draft is going to definitely have to change. Now, our student infractions, this is kind of where we get into the if-thens, the discipline part of things, and what we expect from students, and if they don't meet those expectations, what happens. We've broken them into minor infractions and major infractions. So a minor infraction, that might be something similar to maybe what you remember in school as a write-up, an office referral, something along those lines. So that could be a disruption that is enough to very much disrupt class and not something that a teacher can address with a quick redirection. It could be defiance, inappropriate language, dishonesty, horseplaying, cheating, dress code violations. A variety of things fall on the minor infraction. When we get to the major infractions, those are things that immediately administration needs to be notified of. Fighting, drugs, an escalation of behavior, consistent bullying, sexual harassment, our cell phone policy, we have that in there. So a variety of things fall into those major infractions. And depending on where things fall is how consequences have been laid out. So these are kind of the disciplinary actions around those. So with any of our infractions, whether they be minor or major, we are always having discussions with students and reteaching that appropriate behavior and what that looks like. And so with a student gets a first infraction, that is just a reteach and just reminders of those expectations. If it is something that continues into a second or a third, that's when guardians are being contacted. Some different structures might have to be in place for that student. If they get to the point where we have a fourth infraction, that kind of ups it to a major infraction. That we've had 3, now 4 pretty significant events in a classroom, and it looks like our systems and our expectations and our reteaching of behaviors are not working. So that shifts into a major infraction at that fourth one, and a different level of supports are needed. We have kind of what those interventions can look like for students. So this could be behavior charts. This could be a private conversation, all the way up into a different setting to learn some character type skills. This is some disciplinary action for major infractions, and it really, I think you can see that within our discipline matrix. So if fighting, then what? If in possession of drugs, then what? That I can also now tell you based on this matrix, there are some things that are not included, like we make sure that a threat assessment is done, make sure that parent guardians are contacted. So kind of shifting maybe what this matrix looks like. So parents and guardians have a very clear vision of if expectations are met, what can happen. And then, of course, we want to be able to display this policy and other policies for your viewing and for you to sign off on before the year starts. So the expectations are very, very clear. So this is our current draft that we have been working through bit by bit. And so kind of where I see this going forward and where I really want your input is changing the discipline policy to a citizenship policy. So one of our profile of a graduate skills that is district-wide is citizenship. And basically what we're doing within a discipline policy is kind of the consequences for when you're not meeting those expectations for being a citizen of 2nd Street and Frankfort Independent and the Frankfort community. So kind of our next steps that I see happening is we need to develop 2 different citizenship policies, one that is very much focused on elementary and then one that is focused on our middle school. Because consequences look very different for a 5-year-old versus a 13-year-old, and that has to be separated. The next piece is to create a policy from that lens of the expectations and not the consequences. So making sure we make it very clear what expectations are in the classroom, in the other parts of the building outside of a school building through that Panther Pride context. I also want to make it very clear to families what supports we have in place to teach expectations, from guidance and to the different supports we have through some tier 2 and our revamping of that SRT model. And then I do think it is very important that the consequences of if expectations are not met, that those are very clear. And I'm not sure with our current draft those are. So that is the way I would like to frame this policy going forward. I also think it's important for families to understand how this connects to even district policies that are very much above us. Sometimes, we want our policies to be cohesive with our district, but sometimes those district policies will trump what is happening in the building, depending on what is occurring. And then also, I would really like to expand this out into the community. If we have expectations here in the school and our students understand that Panther Pride language, that if they go to a community establishment, that we can hopefully try and reach those community businesses, and that we can maybe have this Panther Pride graphic in windows of businesses in downtown Frankfort, in the community where our students go. And so they understand what the purpose is when they walk into that business and what respect looks like in that establishment. And so that this is a common language that they are seeing, not just in school, but they're seeing it in their everyday lives. And they see it as a lifelong learning lesson. So this is where we are with our discipline policy. I have created a feedback form because I really want to ask some good questions to get the community and our families involved on kind of how to make this take shape. So I hope this video was helpful in kind of guiding that work. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for listening.